It's said to be the most Asian city outside Asia. Vancouver, Canada. The kind of place that should be immune to a rise in pandemic-fueled racism. Yet last year, more anti-Asian hate crimes were reported to police in Vancouver than in the top 10 most populous U.S. cities combined. The disproportionate rash of incidents has raised an unsettling question. Maybe Vancouver isn't the bastion of progressive multiculturalism it thinks it is.
I was walking home actually from just picking up some food by myself. Saw this kind of white man start to approach me. That's when I realized that he was saying some racial and sexual slur at me, which I chose to ignore. That's when he turned around and he spat on my face.
Hate, violence, and discrimination have no place in Canada. This is not who we are as Canadians.
One of the actual most insidious forms of racism in Canada is the forgetting of our own history. That right from the moment that Canada began in 1867, white supremacy was instituted into the legal framework of Canada. From the head tax of 1885 to the Komagata Maru and the exclusion of South Asians through the Continuous Journey Act in 1908, the exclusion of Japanese Canadians as well as their removal from the West Coast in 1942. When we think of what is normal Canada, a sense that Canada is white, well, that took a lot of work. It took political work, it took legal exclusion.
By the 1980s, close to half of all immigrants being admitted into Canada were from Asia. Most weren't rich, but increasingly the country was tweaking its policies to attract the wealthy. The latest spike in hate crimes also draws from a more recent chapter in Vancouver's history, one in which Asians, once stigmatized as an immigrant underclass, have been increasingly perceived as elites with rancor-inducing wealth, displayed in news segments and reality TV shows.
A lot of Chinese, when they come over to Canada, they say, wow, this car is so inexpensive, I want to buy two.
If I'm beef, I'm Wagyu.
You could see happening in the public discourse at the time that media was constantly about Asian buyers, particularly wealthy Chinese buyers coming in and buying up homes.
For anyone trying to buy a home in Vancouver, we all know it's expensive.
Many blame foreign buyers, mainly from China, for snatching them away.
International investors buying BC homes and leaving them empty.
Starting in about 2014, there was this particularly acute run-up in housing prices. Prices were going up, in some cases like 40% a year. The government began rolling in a series of tax measures, beginning in mid-2016. First, it was an empty homes tax. Then it was a foreign buyers tax. And after that, it was a speculation tax. That latter one targeted so-called satellite families, and that's a term that has been associated with households where the breadwinner stays in Asia while the spouse and children live in Vancouver.
But all along, economists and statisticians, as well as the Federal Housing Agency, were taking a much more nuanced view.
They were saying, well, of course, wealthy buyers from China were playing in a supporting role in fueling the market, but there were a host of other factors. So under Canada's property tax and capital gains system, essentially what happens is once you invest in a property, it's very cheap to hold and you get to keep all the gains when you sell. So that does incentivize investment.
But the real villains were a decade-plus stretch of historically low interest rates and a Canadian propensity to borrow that had elevated property speculation to a national sport. In a statement to Bloomberg News, the provincial government said their policies ensure property buyers pay their fair share of taxes. It also said the important difference is not by citizenship, but between people who work and pay taxes here and the people who do not. Yet the province exempted non-resident buyers in places such as Whistler, a resort town just 2 hours north of Vancouver, with an even more acute affordability problem. But in Whistler, the foreigners are mostly Americans, not Chinese.
What we're seeing is that people can make money from real estate, except if you are Asian, you shouldn't make money from real estate. your wealth is undeserved. What happens through time is that very threat of success becomes extolled, strangely enough, as you're a model minority, and that is actually a double-edged sword. Well, I think for a lot of people, there's been kind of a bubble burst where over this last year, it's been clear that it doesn't matter how much you've invested in success and belonging and even succeeded, you could say, in getting into the right club, so to speak. You can still be violently attacked on the street. And I think that's been, in some sense, a difficult wake-up call for those who think that they've been able to evade or escape racism. It's not that easy. You can't escape it through economic mobility. In fact, what the lesson of the housing and affordability scapegoating is that you get to live in the right neighborhood and then you become the problem.